Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Friday afternoon Miami Dolphins fan live stream. The word of the day is pain. They did it again. You are tied in the fourth quarter against the Buffalo Bills, and your defense just forced a third straight punt, and you think it's a good idea to try to block the punt instead of setting up for a return? What in the literal hell is wrong with the special teams coordinator? That dude's seat should be hotter than McDaniel's if it was his call. Zach Sealer ends up committing the dumbest possible penalty he could have committed in that situation. And then you know the rest. Defense can't stop the Bills. After that point, Bills get the touchdown to retake the lead. Tua gets the ball back, goes down the field, and then throws a brutal interception. It's the third week in a row where Tua has thrown at least one, if not multiple, horrendous interceptions when he has had wide open receivers on several of these plays. It is highly frustrating. The Dolphins. Give me a second. The Dolphins proved they had, at least on paper, the playmaking talent and ability to beat the Bills, who were being uncharacteristically dominated throughout most of that second half. And once again, for it's the second time in as many weeks that special teams and a brutal Tua interception has cost us the game. Literally, the Dolphins probably would have beaten the Patriots if they hadn't surrendered the 90-yard kickoff return touchdown after the punt return touchdown by Malik Washington. And we were just one simple setup for the block away from having the ball back in a tie game with plenty of time left and the ability to retake the lead. I want to know who is responsible for trying to make our special teams block on that punt. And I want them to be fired yesterday. Caprelay says, Kyle, my fantasy team sucks, just like our Finns. It's even worse than I could have imagined. The Dolphins players did not give up on McDaniel. They went out there and played what had been a really good game, and then two of the most boneheaded plays that we've seen since week 2 cost us the game. The Dolphins would have had a really good chance of winning this game. The Dolphins would have had a really good chance of winning the game. But no, Zach Sieler, he gets called for roughing the kicker when if it had been a running into the kicker penalty, it would have been 4th and 2. But they call him for roughing, so that's 15 yards and first down. Yeah, the players fought hard and then got absolutely sold down the river by special teams and Tua for the second week in a row. Swift is listed as questionable for Sunday's game against the Cowboys. Are you kidding me? That's my running back too. Oh no. I'm going to have to scramble and find a running back off of waivers if I don't have if DeAndre Swift isn't playing. I need a running back too in fantasy now. Tua turned the ball over, has kept showing his ugly face in every single game. In week 1, it was just get another piece of tinder onto the dumpster fire that was week 1. In weeks 2 and 3, they, along with those turnovers, along with special teams. Yeah, there's nothing out there, I'm sure. You're talking about running backs on waivers. Well, I mean, maybe I can make a trade. I have an idea. So yeah, the Dolphins didn't just lose to the Bills last night. They lost in a fashion that allowed the Dolphins fans to have just a shred of hope before having it brutally torn away in the fourth quarter. Thanks to one of the worst special teams gaffes I've seen in a long time, somehow even worse than surrendering a 90-yard kickoff touchdown after a 47-yard punt return touchdown. Cap for Life says, I will give you a 2-for-1. Well, yeah, if you want to propose a trade to me, by all means do it. Although my roster is full right now, so I can't take on 2 players without having one on IR, which would mean I would have to put DeAndre Swift in my IR space. Thank God there's an IR space. Yeah, the run efficiency was great. Gordon and Achane need to run the ball more often. Cap for Life, apparently DeAndre Swift is questionable for the game against the Cowboys, and he is my running back besides Achane, and I have no other running backs on my roster. And there's just a big old pile of scrap to be had on. So Mike McDaniel Mike McDaniel said the Dolphins are getting better despite their 0-3 start to the season, but there are growing pains involved. Growing pains for a team led by a 6-year veteran and chock full of talent across at least the offensive side of the ball. Growing pains. McDaniel said he is not proud of any loss, but admitted Friday morning that the team is improving week over week. The team has gotten better in a couple of weeks and is getting to the point where you can reasonably expect to go to a game on Sunday and have the expectation to win through good football. However, there's still things that we are falling short of, and we're trying to make that it's not the same thing over and over. Special teams, Tua turned the ball over. There are no moral victories, he said. No moral Oh, that's Tua talking. No moral victories, that's for sure. There's definitely some things we can take away that are good and up to par with our standard of how we operate within our offense. Never good to lose, regardless of how a certain individual may have felt they performed. This is a team sport. We win together, we lose together. I've got to be better, Sealer said after the game. I can't be making stupid errors like that. Well, how about whoever is in charge of special teams on this godforsaken team doesn't call up a blocking scheme when it's a tie game and the Dolphins are getting the ball back? I never am proud of a loss, said McDaniel. We came here to win. I refuse to take moral victories as the head coach of the Miami Dolphins. You have a bad feeling about the Jets game next week? Pick up Swift's backup Johnson. Oh, thank you for the suggestions, Cap for Life. I'll have to log into my fantasy. Yep. DeAndre Swift was limited as questionable for Sunday's game against Dallas. He was a limited practice participant Wednesday through Friday, never quite progressing the full. Apparently, Kyle Monangai was Chicago's number 2 running back for the past couple games, while Roschon Johnson missed week 1 with a foot injury, then strictly played special teams in a week 2 blowout loss. All right, well, I know what to do here. Let's see. Cohen says Ross is all about the moral wins. Cap for Life says NFL Network's Ian Rappaport reports that Dolphins owner Stephen Ross does not want to fire head coach Mike McDaniel. Well, no shit. I mean, the Dolphins were tied with the Bills in the second half. Like, how much of the blame for how last night's game turned out can actually go to Mike McDaniel? Unless he was the moron who decided to try and go for the block on special teams, resulting in that roughing the kicker penalty. McDaniel really wasn't the problem last night. You could argue Anthony Weaver and his defense are way worse. Like, I have never seen a defense so incompetent. Cap for Life says, why throw on first down with 2 timeouts? Achane was wide open on that play. Achane had nothing but green field ahead of him if Tua had bothered to look in his direction. Colin says, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Finns sign another corner. Haven't seen any update on the one that walked back to the locker room. Yeah, that was Jason Marshall Jr., our rookie, and he was the starting nickel corner. So now we have to probably replace him. Yeah, Tua cost us this game, and special teams cost us this game again for the second week in a row. And now the Dolphins have to play Monday night at home against the Jets. And losing against the Jets pretty much puts the kibosh on whatever remaining optimism, if any, is left for this season. Jack Jones did momentarily walk off the field after taking a hard hit. But he came back into the game. Yeah, Darren Waller should be back next Monday. It was two times in the game where we had a great play. Julian Hill had his first completion of the year, I believe, and had gotten the first down deep in Bills territory, and Jonas Zavaiina got called for ineligible man downfield. Like, how long does it take for the Dolphins to be able to properly communicate and know whether it's a run or a passing play? That can't be on McDaniel, right? I mean, McDaniel's not in the huddle. Yeah, the party does feel over. Colin says, I want to see it to believe it with Waller. Okay. So, okay, now I have a running back, a backup running back. I chose Miles Sanders. Dallas has had a surprisingly good run game, and while Javonte Williams has accounted for most of it, I do like Miles Sanders as a potential um, lotto ticket for end zone snaps and for in the case of a Javonte Williams injury. David says McDaniel makes the easy difficult and the difficult impossible. Colin says honestly would consider trading Hill to Kansas City. They would be more inclined to pay a little bit more for Hill, considering there's wide receiver issues right now. Well, the Dolphins right now, since 2000, I believe I read 117 teams have gone 0-3 to start the season. Only one of them made the playoffs, and that was the 2018 Houston Texans. So that is under 1%, well under 1% of the teams who go 0-3. So it's not impossible. Coleman says, I remember that team. Party's over, says, burn the hat, season's over, Fluffy. Well, Fluffy was the Saint Bernard who is sadly no longer with us. I'm Jaws Jr. You can also call me Kyle. So, so last night revealed a couple of rather brutal truths. On the one, Finn, the Dolphins have clearly not given up. They did not throw in the towel after the first couple of losses. They were this close to potentially taking the lead against the Bills in the fourth quarter multiple times. But on the other, Finn, it appears that the Dolphins have been stricken with a deadly case of anti-clutch. It means that no matter how good the team is looking, no matter how near that victory might seem, no matter what's that little shred of hope might be, it's going to get taken away from us because the Dolphins keep shooting themselves at the worst possible moments. If it isn't the special teams, then it's Tua. Yeah, that trash defense played surprisingly well in the second half. That was the most brutal part. We got the stops we needed from the defense. We had we were one play away from three straight stops by the defense, and then Zach Sealer roughs the kicker, and then the Bills rebooted the offensive system and just got the touchdown and never relinquished that lead. And then, that final drive with Tua having the chance to tie the game again. He just throws a horrendous interception, and apparently the broadcast was talking about how Tua's average air yards on his throw are in the negative, meaning he just can't throw past the line of scrimmage anymore. It's sad. We saw the kind of player that Tua could have been in 2022 and 2023, but the concussions. I think the concussions have clearly had an impact on Tua's ability to make decisions. He's lost the ability to look past his first read. I mean, throwing to the spot worked. Throwing to the spot worked on the Tyreek Hill touchdown last night, and then throwing to the spot cost us the game almost single-handedly when he targeted Waddle. Yeah, if we go at 0-4, it's time to throw Quinn Ewers to the Wolves. Going 0-4 will probably guarantee that we trade Tyreek Hill. I'm sure he can't be much happier right now compared to the first couple of weeks. I mean, we got him and Waddle involved in our offensive game plan last night. They both had a touchdown, but Tua just keeps literally throwing away the game, and our special teams keep screwing up at the worst possible times. Colin says, never really understood the predetermined throws that Tua does sometimes. Well, that's part of the McDaniel system. That's part of the McDaniel system. Is all those predetermined throws. Opposing defenses have long since figured them out. So unless Waddle or Tyreek are able to outrun the defenders are going to read those first reads like a book, like a comic book. Tua either can't or won't adjust his game to make it so that he isn't just blindly chucking the ball to a spot without checking to make sure a defender isn't going to snag the ball. It is frustrating, to put it lightly. Even if you even if you just discard, even if you discard week one and say the Colts were going to blow us out because Daniel Jones took us by surprise, the Dolphins should be 2-1 right now with wins against the Patriots and Bills. With how we had played in these past couple of games. Instead, we're 0-3. 0-3, and you can point to that 0-3. This 0-3 is entirely the result of being blown out in week one, special teams gaffes and costly turnovers in week two, and special teams gaffes and costly turnovers in week three. And now we have to go play the Jets, who I don't exactly anticipate getting a win this week either. So what's left? Have we officially entered the waiting for Tyreek or McDaniel to be gone? Because unfortunately, the true albatross on this team is the one with the $51 million a year contract. Like, McDaniel appeared to have made adjustments to his game plan. There was way less pre-snap motion. The plays overall seemed much more sensible. We only ran one of our stupid trick plays like once or twice. We actually utilized the legs of both Achane and Ollie Gordon, something we've been begging for 3 weeks. And it still wasn't enough because Tua threw a costly interception to follow up a horrendous special teams gaff again. This season, more than any other, feels like it has been precision engineered to extract the most pain out of Dolphins fans imaginable. It's not enough to get blown out in week one by Daniel Jones and the Colts. It's not enough to lose at home in a tight game against the Patriots because of surrendering a 90-yard kickoff return touchdown and then throwing away the ball on the next Dolphins drive. No, we have to travel to Buffalo on Thursday night, have a tie game at halftime, a tie game deep into the second half, and then choke that game up thanks to Zach Sealer being an idiot and Tua being unable to throw passes downfield without the chance of them being intercepted. Should start streaming college football. Yeah, I'll have to pass on the college football. Like, my dad and I are already, you know, in spite of the Dolphins' best efforts, we're still emotionally invested in the team. You saw it last night, and we have the Florida Panthers, and it'd be nice. It'd be nice to just stick with those two for right now. So there were a couple of articles that were posted on NFL and on ESPN. Give me a second. So, so these articles were posted before last night's game. So take them as you will. So ESPN, we have to start scouting our next quarterback. ESPN had ranked the 0-2 teams based on their chances of making the postseason. And they put the Dolphins at number 4. Our chance of advancing to the postseason is 5.1%. I'm sure that's got to have dropped to below 1% by now. It seems as if the Dolphins have been through a season's worth of conflicts in 2 weeks. Visibly disgruntled wide receiver, players only meeting blowout loss, blown fourth quarter lead against a division rival at home. The Dolphins have done it all. And you can add to that pile costly special teams and turnover gaffes that lose you a game against the Bills on the roads while it was tied in the second half. The Dolphins have done it all. The most popular conversations surrounding Miami is whether Tyreek Hill or Mike McDaniel will be the first to leave town. I'm not sure if getting rid of either makes sense, at least not right now. Hill is clearly frustrated, and the organization essentially choosing to forget when he asked out of the lineup and requested a trade at the end of last season couldn't have done wonders for locker room morale. But this offense isn't going to get better without Hill in the lineup. And although McDaniel is unlikely to return for another season at this rate, given owner Stephen Ross's history of firing coaches, the Dolphins are almost surely going to be looking outside the building for their next hire, which they'd obviously do only in the offseason. Do the Dolphins have any hope of turning things around? Week 2 suggests so. The offense was completely inept in the Week 1 loss to the Colts, but 1 week later it scored 20 points on 8 drives against the Patriots. Hill had a 109-yard game, including his first 40-plus yard catch in over a year. The Dolphins came within a Devon Achane footstep of scoring the touchdown to take the lead with 1:15 to go. It wasn't exactly the 70-point stomping of the Broncos in 2023, but it was a major step in the right direction after a truly awful week. That game against the Broncos might actually be another reason to be patient. Denver allowed 70 points after giving up 35 to a Sam Howell-led Commanders offense 1 week earlier. The Broncos looked like a historically bad defense in the making. What happened? They got better. Vance Joseph's defense was 12th in EPA per play over the remainder of the 2023 and then led the league by the same metric the following season. I'm not saying that sort of turnaround is necessarily in the cards for the Dolphins, but one disaster game and one mediocre one should be enough to insist upon a clean out. Oh, this just keeps going on and on. Good grief. More like scouting out the offensive line and defensive backs. The problem for the Dolphins, at least on offense, is that it's tough to see how they can unlock a new level of play. We saw the best version of this offense in 2022 and 2023 when Miami had a Pro Bowl caliber left tackle in Teron Armstead and a solid guard in Robert Hunt. Armstead retired. Hunt left for the Panthers, and the Dolphins haven't invested heavily in replacements. What a shock! We didn't invest in offensive line. It is coming back to bite us. Patrick Paul and Jonas Savaiena are still working things out on the left side, while right tackle Austin Jackson just went on IR. Tua's blind side is being protected by former Bears reserve Larry Borom. The 2023 Dolphins hit another level by dominating on the ground, something that hasn't recurred since then. Miami is 31st in EPA per play on designed runs since the start of 2024, and although it was excellent on them in the opener against the Colts, the early deficit took the run game out of the picture. McDaniel has essentially turned Achane into an every down back, which gets Miami's most talented runner the ball, but also puts a lot of wear and tear on the 5'9", 191-pounder. McDaniel is widely regarded as one of the most creative and revered run scheme builders in the league, so this appears to be more of a talent issue up front than a schematic concern. Well, guess what? We actually utilized Ollie Gordon last night, and he did well, and it still wasn't enough. Even if the offense gets going, though, the defense looks bad on paper and hasn't played out much better in practice. The hope was always that a deep front four, led by Chop Robinson, Zach Sealer, Bradley Chubb, and Jalen Phillips, would be able to cover for the secondary, which looks like GM Chris Greer simply forgot about the concept of defensive backs. When the Dolphins fleshed out their biggest weak spot by signing Jack Jones and Rasul Douglas and in training camp and then playing them for meaningful snaps right out of the gate, it spoke to just how much of a mess cornerback was and still is for the Dolphins. Yeah, now Jason Marshall Jr. is injured. Just lovely. And Zach Sealer was the guy who cost us almost single-handedly cost us 7 points, or allowed the Bills to get a touchdown when we had stopped them. The timing roots really started with Walsh and Montana, but McDaniel, no Walsh, and Tua, no Montana. Got that right. Unfortunately for defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver, the pass rush hasn't taken over the games yet. The Dolphins rank 29th in pressure rate this season, ahead of only the 49ers, Panthers, and Colts. They've done that with the NFL's fourth highest blitz rate, which seems incomprehensible and illogical given how limited they are at corner. It would be one thing if these blitzes were working, but Miami is 27th in opponent quarterback rating when sending extra rushes this season. After the Dolphins' ugly Week 1 loss, I said it was too early to rule them out, considering how easy their schedule would be over the coming weeks. Well, one of those winnable games was at home against the Patriots, and the Dolphins just lost that one. Traveling to Western New York in September is a lot different from playing there in December or January, but the Dolphins now need to beat the Bills to save their season. If they lose to Buffalo and followed that up with a loss to the Jets or the Panthers over the 2 ensuing games, the wheels might come off entirely. Some might say they already have. Let's see. And this is the other article I found. Why the Dolphins were in need of a culture reset in 2025. David says, need to stop blaming that player. Had the correct play been called, he wouldn't have even been rushing. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. That's fair, David. I want to know who called for trying to attempt the block. It's a tie game in the second half, and you're getting the ball back with plenty of time left. You don't have to try and block the damn punt. That is just a complete and utter meltdown on special teams. At least with Tua, you already knew the risk of him throwing the interception was there. But that situation wouldn't have been a game losing in the first place if the Dolphins had actually, set up to return the punt instead of block it. I want the guy responsible for calling that attempted block on the punt. I want that dude fired immediately. Or else, if we don't get rid of whoever did that, we're just gonna keep having special teams cost us the game. I mean, apparently we got a new special teams coordinator, and we've gotten some really good returns from Malik Washington and D. Eskridge, including a punt return touchdown. But we've also ran into the kicker to gift the Colts a first down, surrendered a 90-yard kickoff return touchdown, and roughed the kicker to gift the Bills 7 points in the lead. Real Cinema says McDaniel said they weren't trying to block the punt. Sealer just made a mistake. Are you serious? Hello, Dolphins fan 1979. So where did you see that, Real Cinema? Because that looked like it was a designed block attempt. So if that's with what you're saying is true, Real, then that would mean either McDaniel is lying or Sealer really is an idiot. I'm sure Sealer has played the game long enough to know how much forward momentum would cause him to bowl over the kicker. So I'll read this article here too. Why the Dolphins were in need of a culture reset in 2025. A fight between two Dolphins players during a sweltering August joint practice session with the Bears might have looked like a team tearing itself apart, but for people within the organization, it was one of the first positive signs that an important change had taken hold. During team drills, linebacker Jordan Brooks took exception to teammate and fellow linebacker Tyrell Dodson for not, in Brooks' view, being physical enough with a Bears offensive player during a particular rep. Ultimately, both players had to be separated as tempers flared. Afterwards, Brooks and Dodson apologized to Dolphins teammates and Mike McDaniel for the scuffle. They later gave a joint interview in the locker room after the team's preseason game that weekend, downplaying the incident as an argument between brothers, but the clash was seen within the team as a resounding example of players taking pride in a new standard of accountability the franchise had tried to instill this offseason. Honestly, in Chicago with Brooks and Dotson, it was players holding players accountable, Bradley Chubb told ESPN. We were in the heat of battle, so it got a bit more heated than it should have, and guys getting in each other's face, but at the end of the day, knowing it's all love and this is about pushing each other to be the best. It was probably the biggest turning point for our defense this offseason because we saw two alphas going at it and pushing each other to be better. Dolphins fan says, what Jaw said on the live stream earlier, McDaniel said they weren't trying to block. Oh, okay. Yeah, Sealer. The real error is having Zach Sealer on special teams. Why is one of our defensive tackles out there trying to make that play? Duckling says, I think the NFL is the most rigged sport in the world. The Dolphins didn't even have a chance to win because it was predetermined. I mean, you could swear. I personally do not believe NFL games are rigged. NFL games are simply manipulated to try and create certain outcomes. That said, Tua's game-losing interceptions for the past couple of weeks have been so bad, you have to question if he's actually trying to lose those games for us and why he would do that. I mean, against the Patriots, Julian Hill was wide open. Against the Bills, Devon Achane was wide open. So, since their disappointing 2024 season ended, the Dolphins, according to multiple current and former players, coaches, and team officials, have sought to improve the culture within the building. The team has reinforced the importance of accountability and jettisoned players whose decision makers in the organization believed weren't conducive to the team's success, while bringing in those they thought would buy in and put team over self. Included in these moves was trading away with one of Miami's best players in Jalen Ramsey this summer, among other measures taken to turn the culture around were off-season 3-a-day workouts, voluntary wind sprints at practice, and an early season players-only meeting. Throughout the offseason, players and coaches referenced their new standard being upheld and re-emphasized the importance the team leaders, including player captains McDaniel and Chris Greer, have placed on relationship building. This, they hoped, would help the franchise contend for a Super Bowl a year after missing the playoffs for the first time in McDaniel's 3 seasons in charge. But 2 weeks into the season and after back-to-back losses to the Colts and Patriots, the resolve Miami believes it is instilled is being tested as it enters a critical game against the Bills on Thursday. Yada, yada. The Dolphins' defense, which was scrutinized this summer after replacing its entire secondary from a season ago, allowed opponents to score on 13 of their first 15 drives to start the season. In the season opener, the Dolphins' offense recorded just 211 yards, the fewest under McDaniel in the game where Tua has started. The Dolphins are 8-11, make that 8-12 since the start of the 2024 season. despite having some of the league's highest paid skill position players, and injuries have plagued the pass rush, in which Miami invested multiple first-round picks. Some fans have even made clear their desire for both McDaniel and Greer to be fired, even taking to the skies before Sunday's game. Duckling, you were scared when Tua dove forward head first one time. He's had enough concussions, even though it's risking serious injuries. Yeah, it's funny. The Dolphins have been afflicted with a pretty bad injury bug, but it has only been targeting corners, corners and offensive linemen. The two positions on the teams that were already razor thin are the ones the injury bug has claimed. Tua has been just fine. Players and coaches believe the Dolphins' culture has changed, or at least has matured. Greer acknowledged that words have little value without action behind them, and Miami's 0-2, make that 0-3 start, leaves it at a crossroads. Down one path, the accountability culture within the building catches on, and the team rebounds to a successful season. Down the other, the Dolphins' 25-year drought without a playoff win is extended and forces Stephen Ross into difficult decisions about who is running his franchise. We can say all the stuff has changed in words and everything, Greer said in August. It doesn't really matter. We have to go do it on the field and win games. It's just a simple way of saying we can say how good we feel and everything is going, but until we win games and do it on the field, it doesn't matter. So, in their final team meeting of the 2024 season, shortly after a season-ending loss to the Jets, McDaniel issued a challenge to his players. According to multiple players and team staff, the Dolphins coach stressed the importance of player-driven accountability and said that anyone who wasn't on board could say so, and the team would either trade or release them. Players repackaged his message to local media later that day during locker room cleanout. Zach Sealer, a team captain and team leader, told reporters that players needed to hold themselves to a higher standard. Oh man, poor Sealer to have these following quotes printed and then do what he did last night. Absolutely, yep, I think so, Sealer said in January. And I think what McDaniel does a great job of is preaching the player locker room. And I think it needs to come from us as players and leaders and captains as well as the staff, and get everyone here and get everyone working together from day one in OTAs and camp, and get things taken care of from day one and take care of business to start fast next year. Multiple sources in and around the team said tardiness was an issue throughout last season. McDaniel told reporters in his end-of-season news conference that finding players didn't particularly move the needle, and said bringing it up as a team and continuing to find guys wasn't enough. One current Dolphins player said he believed some captains this past season took advantage of the role. Ramsey and Tyreek Hill, who were two of the 8 players voted captains last year, were among repeat offenders who received numerous fines throughout the season. Players were often late to practice and meetings, with multiple team sources suggesting it reflected a lack of respect for McDaniel, who was hesitant to publicly admonish players outside of posting fines. However, one former Dolphins player who played for McDaniel in Miami said that behavior wasn't exclusive to the 2024 season, and issues only arose when the team stopped winning games. Issues only arose when teams stopped winning games. In 2024, Miami rebounded from a 2-6 start to finish the season 8-9. Everyone was fine with cutting meetings, cutting practice when they're winning. But once you're losing, it's like now you can't get mad at that. The player said you were just enjoying it when you were winning. As losses mounted this past year, players were called out for tardiness or absence, which the former player said added to some players' frustrations. That frustration boiled over when Hill removed himself from the team's season finale loss to the Jets. After that Jets game, McDaniel told reporters he was informed Hill was not available and that his absence wasn't injury related. In the locker room, Hill, who was in the first season of a 3-year, $90 million extension he signed in August, hinted at a potential exit from Miami. I just have to do what's best for me and my family, if that's here or wherever the case may be, he said in January. I'm about to open up that door for myself. I'm out, bruh. It was great playing here, but at the end of the day, I have to do what's best for my career. I'm too much of a competitor to just be out there. Real Cinema says, year 26. Give it up for year 26. Sure looking like it, unless we've got some 2018 Texans magic. How much more is good grief? Okay, I'll just have to keep on reading this. Former Dolphins running back Raheem Mostert said during an appearance on the Stugotz and Company podcast earlier this month, Hill pulled himself from the game amid one of the worst statistical seasons of his career, although it's something Mostert himself said he would never do. Hill apologized publicly in February to both the team and Tua, who did not play in the last game. Ultimately conveyed to the team he still wanted to be a part of it after the season, though Tua said in July that their relationship required a repair. When asked last week, Hill told ESPN that he doesn't believe he received preferential treatment and insisted on his high-caliber work ethic, but he did not deny missing meetings or arriving late to meetings in practice. Hill told ESPN he has not missed any meetings this year, dating back to the offseason, and has been on time to everything. Ramsey's behavior, meanwhile, became a drain on team morale, according to multiple sources, including current and former players, who said his actions varied from being late to team activities to outright leaving practice. Greer spoke publicly in April, saying the team and Ramsey mutually agreed to seek a trade, but a source within the organization said the decision was team-driven. Miami traded him and Jonnu Smith to the Steelers in exchange for Mika Fitzpatrick. Ramsey and his agents did not respond to multiple attempts to obtain a comment. Miami also refrains from making high capital additions this offseason, bringing in players on modest deals while signing Sealer to a 3-year, $63 million extension. Greer said in August the Dolphins' roster moves this offseason, like allowing homegrown safety Javon Holland to leave in free agency and releasing veterans such as Raheem Mostert, Kendall Fuller, and Durham Smythe, were an effort to financially reset, but also hinted at needing to move forward with the right guys on the roster. When you bring in so many new players that have been stars that played other places and you kind of work through it, you have your expectations, but you're winning, Greer said. But you look at it and you're like, hey, I don't know if we're winning the right way. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it was. We had a lot of good guys in that locker room, as you know. Some of the guys that are leaders were here before as well. They were held accountable, but at times, guys, it didn't matter to them. Moving on from those people with the right guys here and focusing on that, because when you have a year like we did last year, we had we had gone to the playoffs the 2 previous years. And at some point, you say, "Okay, all right, enough is enough." Throughout the summer, Dolphins players stressed the importance of establishing their new standard, which included one-upping each other in off-season workouts away from the facility. Since the season ended last year, I've spent a lot of time with Patrick Paul. So our grind, his mentality, his work, doing 2-a-days, 3-a-days, stuff like that, it's different, Aaron Brewer said. Duckling says Tyreek Hill streams Fortnite on Twitch. The entire offseason was about the other teams he wanted to join. He said he never wants to go to the Cowboys. Well, he's smart. He's smart then. Even he knows that Jerry Jones is somehow a worse GM than Chris Greer. He's doing it, so I'm trying to do the same thing to keep each other on the same level. He's hold each other accountable. On the field, players were seen running wind sprints during and after practice. It's something we as the players decided, Austin Jackson said. If we have pre-snap penalties, we're going to punish ourselves for that. Things that are in our controllables, that's what we call that. Pre-snap penalties, we can control that. So if you make the mistake in practice, we're going to self-correct ourselves with a little disciplinary action. Player-driven leadership has always been emphasized under McDaniel, who began his Miami tenure with a 20-14 record and 2 playoff appearances. His style, as one current player describes, is laid back without being hands-off. The former Dolphins player who played for McDaniel said the coach was always open and vulnerable with his players, which he thinks players misconstrued as being soft. Some people like having someone that's going to keep them accountable, he said. Some people like having that hard-nosed guy as a head coach. But Mike was always open with the guys, always vulnerable. I personally take that as being a person. You're being human. But some people just don't respect that, and that's on them. I personally don't think that you need your coach to rile you up, to be hovering over you for you to do your job, because we're not in high school anymore. We've got to take care of our own business. I don't care if Tyreek gets special treatment or not, because that doesn't affect me. What affects me is what I do when I go out there and do. McDaniel said Tuesday he hasn't issued any fines for lateness or attendance since the end of this past year, outside of an alarm clock issue in week 2 of training camp. He said, be on time. He said, be on time is the third team rule behind protect the team and no excuses, and players have adhered to it this season. You acknowledge and attack a problem for a solution, and all you can ask for is that this team hasn't been a victim of that. McDaniel hasn't changed his leadership style this year, though the team source told ESPN that McDaniel has been more willing to call out players, starting with the team's captains. Zealer, Tua. After the Dolphins' Week 1 loss to the Colts, McDaniel told the media that Tua's play left something to be desired. Tua completed 14 of 23 for 114 with 1 touchdown and 2 interceptions. His 2.7 quarterback rating was the worst of any start he's had where he did not leave with an injury. It was the worst performance among all QBs that week. McDaniel also mentioned Sealer as a player who abandoned his assignment, which led to an explosive play for the Colts. Oh boy, the team captain that we just gave the extension to has now been caught lacking for multiple weeks. Yay. Dolphins players met September 9th following the loss to make sure the results didn't snowball, though the meeting did not prevent a 33-27 loss to New England in Week 2. Brooks says McDaniel relies on the team's captains to keep a handle on locker room morale. I mean, it's player-led, but he's still the head coach, Brooks said. So it's not so much the players are just running the team and setting themes. I think he kind of relies on us for moments like this. We go out there and get whooped, like, oh, we got to gather the troops. This is where your leaders come in, making sure that everybody's locked in, making sure that your team is still committed. That's what I think what he means player-led. He's still the head coach, you know what I mean. If he wants something to go that way, it's going to go that way. One former Dolphins player who spent the previous 2 seasons with the team under McDaniel said the issues plaguing Miami don't stem from a poor culture. I think it's schematic and personnel-wise that's more of the problem with the culture. They've had the same culture for the years they were winning as they did the one down year. So, schematic and personnel, doesn't that mean McDaniel and Greer are still the problem? In the loss to New England, Miami committed 2 pre-snap penalties on a potential game-winning drive before ultimately turning the ball over on downs. After the game, McDaniel and Tua each expressed frustration over the team's level of communication, with McDaniel saying his assistant coaches did not execute in a very dire period of the game. Oh, so now he's throwing his assistants under the bus. I mean, who exactly is supposed to be taking the blame here for lack of communication? Tua said he would also take some initiative to clean up an ongoing issue for Miami. Its offense was also flagged for having too many men on the huddle on a 2-point conversion attempt in Week 1. I'm going to have a conversation with Mike. I'm going to have a conversation with quarterback coach Darrell Bevel with our offensive guys and talk about it, because what we put out there, Tua said. Anyone who knows football and anyone who doesn't know football just knows that was not clean and that was not right, what we were doing at the end of the game. We'll get that fixed, communicate that to those guys, and we'll move forward from there. High above Hard Rock Stadium prior to the Dolphins' loss to the Patriots on Sunday, a small aircraft flew a banner behind it with an unmistakable message: "Fire Greer, fire McDaniel." It didn't outwardly bother for McDaniel. Fans want their team to win. I don't think it's personal. I think they want to win, and so do I. Ross issued a statement hours after last season ended, committing to McDaniel as the coach and Greer as the GM, with an important caveat. "I believe in the value of stability," Ross said. "However, continuity as leadership is not to be confused with an acceptance that status quo is good enough." A source familiar with Ross's thinking told ESPN this offseason they don't believe McDaniel's and Greer's job security hinges on something as simple as playoffs or bust, and reiterated that sentiment after Week 1. Greer said in January that Ross hadn't issued an ultimatum to either of them. McDaniel said Monday that his conversations with Ross haven't changed despite Sunday's loss to the Patriots. According to the aforementioned team source, Ross's status quo comment pertains more to the process than the results, though there is a limit to his patience with the team's results. After a winless start to this 2025 season and primetime games against division opponents coming, there will be increased outside attention on how far Ross's patience will stretch. Even as the losses have continued, McDaniel said this week he isn't worried about losing his job. I think if I worry about my job security, I won't be doing my job. I think that inherently is against all feeds that I believe in, McDaniel said following the Week 2 loss to New England. I've never felt entitled to this position, and it's very important for me to spend all my waking hours worrying exactly how to do my job. I won't spend one moment thinking about all the things that whatever people want me to think about. I'm thinking about this team and the Bills here after I get done with this podium. In light of all their efforts to change things, the players and coaches acknowledge the team is still finding its identity. McDaniel believes how his team responds to the adversity is what will ultimately define it. I feel like we have a unified locker room and a unified team. It's one of those things that failure provides an opportunity to see that with transparency. It's not as gray as everybody going in the same direction. A lot of times when you experience collective failure, you lose a game or two, you get to see exactly what type of culture you have based on how people respond. That's one of the reasons I focus on response so much, because to me that's all really life is, and teams are, and cultures are. All right. That was a long article. Too bad the Dolphins couldn't get it together for winning last night. Real Cinema says Ross is clueless. Even other typically poorly run franchises have at least won a playoff game. You have to try to fail this badly. Yeah. Well, we're 0-3 now. Only one team has made the playoffs after going 0-3 in this past quarter century. And we have to play the Jets on Monday Night Football, who are probably going to be desperate for their first win as well. Who do the Jets play this week? The Buccaneers. Oh, yeah, they're getting destroyed. So we're potentially looking at an early tank bowl here between the Jets and Dolphins on Monday Night Football next week. Both 0-3, because Tampa Bay would have to beat themselves to lose against the Jets right now. Okay. Unless anyone else has something to add, I think I'll go ahead and sign off. There's just there's only so many things I can say about the Dolphins right now. I cannot remember the last time, if ever, where the team that had this much skill and talent but also was losing games because of being completely anti-clutch. And the quarterback who won't stop throwing interceptions. Duckling thinks you think Jordan Love is overrated? Well, it's not going to matter if Jordan Love is overrated, because right now nobody can do anything against that Packers defense, especially since Micah Parsons joined. The Packers might win the NFC North almost single-handedly because of Jerry Jones. Although, the Lions, I would say, are always a threat. You would have to see how the following the next Lions Packers game goes. If the Lions are able to get the victory there, they might have. So, oh yeah, I'll read a couple of statistics here. The Dolphins have allowed opponents to score on 18th of the Dolphins have allowed opponents to score on 18 of their 23 possessions this season, not counting kneel downs. They owned the NFL's second worst scoring defense through 3 games, allowing 32.3 points per game. Did I mention that our defense has yet to have a single takeaway this year? Our defensive line has not forced a single fumble. Our secondary hasn't even come close to an interception most of the time. So, half of Tua's completions last night, 11 of Tua's 22 completions were behind the line of scrimmage. 50%. So, McDaniel said Darren Waller is expected to make his Dolphins debut, after missing their first 3 games with a hip injury. Yay! Steven says, I slept during the game yesterday. Congratulations, you missed all the heartbreak. Yeah, I am enjoying this Friday in spite of the Dolphins. Duckling says Packers had the easiest start to the schedule so far. They haven't played a good team yet. The Lions were rusty and not at their normal form. Well, let's see who the Packers are playing this week. They're playing the Browns, so you're not going to get any new information there. Packers schedule. They're playing the Browns, Cowboys, Bengals, Cardinals, Steelers, Panthers. The first team on this list that I believe is truly going to give the Packers issues is the Eagles on November 10th. Like, the Cowboys offense is still good, but that is, we're talking the NFL schedule makers cooked with this. What is this? The Sunday night game? Yeah, it's the Sunday night game in a couple of weeks between the Packers and Cowboys. That should be fun. Bengals, it's hard to gauge if Jake Browning will be able to continue to carry that offense. Steelers' defense is atrocious. So yeah, the Packers have a realistic chance of being 8-0 with this schedule. Goat Slayer says, did you watch what Shannon Sharp and Oko Cinco said about the Finns game? It was a good take from the two of them. Culture of players skipping out, leaving practice early, coaching and staff have let standards drop for the team. Well, that's funny because I just read an entire article where current and former players and staff have claimed the Dolphins have spent the entire offseason trying to improve accountability and culture. I had not seen any mention anywhere of players this current season or off season leaving practices early or skipping. McDaniel hasn't even had to fine anyone this year. Duckling says whoever made the Packers schedule needs to be fired. So, yeah, another week, another brutal loss for the Dolphins, and it keeps getting worse. The fashion in which we lose these games. Blown out by the Colts. Blown out by the Colts. Losing at home to the Patriots in a tight game. Losing to the Bills in what was a tie game well into the second half. What is next? Are the Dolphins going to be surrendering a double-digit lead to the Jets on Monday night in the fourth quarter? That's the only way I think this could get worse. Is we haven't had the massive choke. These have been merely blowing leads the instant we get them. Blowing the double-digit leads in the fourth quarter is just about the only thing the Dolphins haven't had to suffer through. Ghost Slayer says it's a matter of it has happened and now it's ingrained. Commentary talked about Tyreek's domestic violence allegations near the end of the game. Dolphins are being laughed at as an organization, but Ross doesn't care. Well, now we just have to wait and see. Dolphins are getting an extended break to sit in the timeout corner and think about what they've done. They're going to have 10 days to try and pick themselves out of the gigantic crater they've dug for themselves and get a victory against the divisional opponent when we could have had wins against all three of them. Could you have imagined that? Could you have imagined if the Dolphins responded to that blowout loss against the Colts by winning against the Patriots and the Bills in back-to-back games? The hype would be through the roof. But that's having way too much faith in this team. Might as well be trying to play Madden and get the same results. All right, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. That's about as much Dolphins football as I care to talk about today. Thank you all for joining me, and I have no idea. I believe Dad and I will be live Sunday night for Lions Ravens, because that should be a fun game. And if we are going to cover any other games, we'll let you guys know well beforehand. So yeah, peace.